Okay, so it's just after 2 here. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Josh, hopefully you have everything set up on your side. And first off, just appreciate everyone taking time to join. I know everyone's very busy, especially this time of year as prep for the holidays is obviously underway. Let me just do quick introductions on my side and on what we're doing here with the webcast. So my name is Dan Revellese, and here at Blue Triangle, and looking forward to chatting through the topic of adding revenue prediction to your e-commerce holiday preparedness. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started here. So as we go through the topics with Tim Grant from Blue Triangle and Gary Stute from Microsoft, we're really looking to explore this whole concept of web performance and quantifying the business value of performance and having that as a thread as part of your overall holiday preparedness as we get ready for the upcoming holiday season for e-commerce players right now. And of course, one of the questions that people always ask is you're asking about trying to guess whether or not revenue is leaking, or if you're losing revenue due to that user perceived page performance and site performance, right? And so we use that user perceived concept a lot, and there's metrics that map to that, of course. But it's really important. And what we're saying here at Blue Triangle, and what we're going to talk a little bit about too, with Microsoft, of course, is where e-revenue can be a part of that entire process. And so we're measuring a lot of different e-commerce sites, and just in general, we're seeing with our correlation engine between real user performance and conversion, on average, there's a very large $1.3 million revenue opportunity that's being lost. And we're seeing that just in the sites that from a very high level, 12% of sales. So that's a significant number, whether you are, and it's all relative, whether you are an e-commerce company up and coming, or someone doing, in the billions of dollars. It's a huge percentage of, the overall revenue. And so so this is a topic that we're going to talk about today. And of course, this was something interesting that we saw. I mean, Akamai, here's just a view of Dr. Tom Layton, who's the CEO of Akamai. And you'll see this on the YouTube if you want to see his full presentation, but he's talking about how web pages are getting slower. They're getting bigger and slower. And that's a common thread that's across the board. Of course, Akamai, who measures, I think it's something like 27% of all internet traffic goes through their servers, and 97 out of the top 100 online U.S. retailers here. So clearly have a good sense for page weight and what's going on in that space. So that's a really interesting thing, something we're going to talk about here as a trend and what the impact is to your business. And so those are the main topics here that are listed that the guys, a couple of the experts on the webinar are going to talk about. It's this connection with load testing, and we called it a conversion twist because as the traditional load testing is all about trying to find out where your sites are going to fall over, where servers are going to fail. But clearly there's a large impact as the sites are starting to slow down in your load testing results, and seeing what is that revenue impact of a slowdown, and using your load testing results and combined with the conversion analysis from Blue Triangle, how that could help truly put numbers to with your load testing and from a revenue standpoint. And the same goes for if you're doing A/B testing, which most companies are doing, where you're testing different variant approaches. And I guess the question is, are you adding, or would it be of interest to add the performance revenue impact into that equation, right? So if one area on the A/B test was slower than the others and it impacts conversions, making sure that that's weighed in. And that goes even further, of course, from an optimization strategy standpoint, right? So lots of folks on the phone here, and folks, in the retail space in general, using content delivery networks. I mentioned Akamai earlier having a large presence in that space, of course. But there's always the question, well, should I use more CDN? Can I look at expanding into, say, a latest version, or use it more on the mobile side, for example? And there's a real cost to that. And so what we're trying to suggest is let's quantify that business value of web performance. And where does that help you to justify, CDN or other optimization strategies, and having that kind of budget? And of course, everyone on the webinar here, as retailers, there's lots of tags on the sites, a lot of third-party things going on, and trying to get a sense for, keeping them in track from either an SLA and or, does it make sense if they're slowing down my site? What is the business impact of a third-party, piece of content or something tracking on your site that's causing a slowdown? So those are some of the topics we'll talk about. Of course, here at Blue Triangle, we're all about providing the insight into the experience, right? So where does performance, actual real user performance, where is it impacting revenue, and being able to quantify that amount of money for you and mapping it to your online sales. And we're going to be looking at this at a per page basis as well. So very interesting on how that could help some of your strategies as you get into the holiday season here. So enough of me. I'm just going to do quick introductions. So Tim Grant here is our founder and CTO at Blue Triangle. He's got an undergraduate degree in nuclear engineering and an MBA from VCU. He's been in the performance and scalability sector since '99 and has helped build the first cloud-based load testing system that was eventually acquired by another company. And Tim was part of the founding team here at Blue Triangle and blazed the trail of merging business drivers into performance analytics. So certainly someone who understands load testing and understands web performance at a deep level. And of course, our special panelist guest is Gary Stute from Microsoft. And Gary has got a BS in physics, was previously one of the lead developers over at the Bing division of Microsoft, focusing on performance testing and using things like synthetic testing in the pre-production world. And currently, Gary's the lead PM for performance for all of Microsoft marketplaces, and as well as the lead for PM for experimentation and targeting on the marketplaces division. So, clearly has a deep understanding of performance, and we'll be talking about some of the impact that using Blue Triangle has helped as part of his overall strategy. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Tim to take over control, and let's jump right into it, Tim.
Great. Welcome, everyone. I just have a few thoughts to share with you. As we've progressed, and we've been around for 3.5 years now, and we've been on a lot of really big sites, especially over the holidays. And what I'm going to share with you over the next few minutes is what we're seeing people do to get ready for the holidays and to be the most effective. I've got four things that we'll go over, but just so everybody understands the problem, if you speed up the pages that maybe don't really need it that much, you're probably wasting money. The other side of the coin, which I think is paramount on everybody's mind, is slow pages cause cart abandonment and cause conversion rates to drop, but also average order value. The other thing that people face is, okay, I know my pages need to be faster, but what can I do to impact the page speed on pages that will impact revenue? These are all common questions and really problems that everybody in this industry are facing. So there's a few things that you can look at, and when I refer to the conversion rate curve, I'm basically talking about the relationship that conversion rate has to the page speed for individual pages on your site. What we found is that every page has a unique conversion rate curve fingerprint, and so really another way to think about this, if you think about this in economics, this is conversion rate sensitivity to page speed. Okay, and what we're finding is, like for instance on this site, the difference between 2 seconds, from 2.5 seconds down to about 4.5 seconds, is a drop from 7% conversion rate down to about 4.7% conversion rates, or 4.8%. So what we're seeing is significant impact on this page, but then on this particular site, I could probably show you another 10 or 15 pages that don't quite have this level of sensitivity. So the idea is to find those pages, and when should you look at that is the big question. Load testing, for example, what happens to conversion rate when the pages slow down? So this is a different page on a different site, but what we're seeing is that the optimal conversion rate happens at around, for users that have 3 seconds or faster page speed, but then you can see that the slope coming down just over the course of 2 seconds drops conversion rate to well under half of the conversion rate that that the people that have faster page speeds experience. So it's important to use the conversion rate data during your load tests and to get a really good understanding of it. This particular page on load event shows the page speed versus conversion rate in a really dramatic fashion, where people that get the page loaded in like 1.2 seconds, 1.1 seconds, converting at very, very high rates, approaching 10%, but just slowing down to about 4.5 to 5 seconds, you can see that's almost 5%. So that's half the potential conversions for this particular site. But using the Blue Triangle tools, we actually have a conversion rate calculator that takes all this data for you and lets you analyze and understand what your monthly revenue opportunities are on individual pages. The next one, so I've just talked about load testing. Let's talk about A/B testing. There's a big piece of the conversion rate analysis that's actually missing out of whenever somebody's doing A/B testing today, and across the industry, there's very few people that are actually looking at how the difference of the conversion rate curve from one site to the next isn't impacting the revenue. A lot of times they'll just look at the average conversion rate, but what you can see with this is where the potential lies. And so, for example, on this one, conversion rate for site B has a higher conversion rate almost across the board, and it reduces the sensitivity to speed. Okay, so that's another factor that I'll just kind of throw out there to you, but because it's a relatively flat conversion rate curve. But for site A, you can see that it's sensitive down to a point, and it's just overall lower conversion rate. But a lot of times these curves make it so that you may be able to make the decision to go with one side or another based on the potential on the left side of this curve, saying, oh, you know what, if I have another project to speed up this site, I could potentially get another 2 or 3% conversion rate from site B versus site A. So it's just a piece that's missing, and you definitely should be looking at the conversion rate curves when you're doing this. The third one that we'll talk about real quick is, how do you decide which pages to work on? A lot of the customers that we have anywhere from 20 to 50 different page types and up on their e-commerce site. So how do you know which pages particularly to work on? I've talked to some people that say that the homepage has no impact on conversion rate and it's a waste of time to do anything with it. But on this particular site, the opportunity is about $891,000 a month. So the idea is, let's find the ones that we want to fix today and reprioritize the ones that have possibly a lower conversion rate sensitivity and opportunity to later in the year or maybe next year. Deprioritize those and just maybe let's attack the ones that have the highest opportunity, and then come back and use that to justify your budget for making changes. And so we can actually give you the targets and not have to guess at them. And that's one of the ways that we help our customers. But you should definitely look at this and figure it out, because sometimes we get brought into customer projects and they are looking at their where they're in the middle of a project and let's say they're working on the shop page, but they should be working on the product detail page or something else, and they're effectively wasting it, not just the tool time, but also the opportunity cost of the team, that developer team, and the attention of the entire team to work on it. Okay, so the very last one I'll talk about real quick, and then I'll turn it over to Gary, is managing the third-party content, looking at things at a large, at the macroscopic level, and understanding when things load on the page relative to the DOM content loaded and the onload event. This helps you understand. So the things on the left side of the DOM content loaded, the page on load event, are significant because they could be contributing to the overall page load. And so it's important to look at this at the macroscopic level. This particular one here has about 895,000 page samples that went into this diagram to show you that maybe there's some other things. There's a couple of vendors on here that maybe you might want to optimize for this particular for that particular one. So with that, I think we're going to wait to the end to do Q&A. Please, if you have any questions for me or for Gary or Dan, please note them in the Q&A section below. And with that, Gary, I will turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Tim. So I think we're going to take a little bit of time to talk about holiday priorities today. And some of this may be old information for you and some of it may be new, but this is kind of my experience at Microsoft after going from a very, very different environment in Bing where you have kind of the latest and greatest in development processes and tooling, and you are up and have to handle a huge amount of traffic every day of the week, to a retail environment that is run a little bit more on a shoestring, and where you're going to have less resources, and you're actually focused around this intense 1 week period of the year every year. So obviously every retail site does things a little bit differently. Just to give you some background, Microsoft, we focus very heavily on a couple days before Black Friday and continue on through for the next month with various deals. But our biggest day of the year is probably Wednesday night before Thanksgiving. And our business teams pull out all the stops and have a number of great deals that they push out every year on that day. And so we see quite a different behavior for our site that one day as compared to every other day of the year. And most of our engineering is built around supporting that one day. So I've kind of outlined holiday priorities in 3 different broad terms. The first one is we've got site reliability. Obviously, especially if you've got a business model where you have one day that's very, very important to you, you need to make sure that the site is staying up and taking orders. Let's see. Oh my God, there we go. So site scalability is going to be the next one, and this starts piggybacking into performance. If your site's already up, you also want to make sure that it scales well, and so that your users can have a performance site and not have any access issues. One thing that we've noticed is that our traffic projections always seem to be under what our actual traffic is, and so I've mentioned here that you want to actually project 10x beyond whatever you think your target traffic is going to be, because I've fooled around with smaller numbers and it's always been much higher. 10x seems to be a very good target. So then lastly, once you have a site that is scalable and reliable, you can start focusing on site performance, because as Tim's mentioned earlier, there is a very, very strong correlation between site performance and abandonment and conversion rates. And to do this, you need to focus particularly on the UX, make sure the site loads quickly, that you focus your investments globally, and then later on focus strategically on individual pages. And most important of all is that you have good data and that you're looking at the data of real users, both in terms of performance and conversion. Just synthetic data really doesn't give you a robust enough data set to go through it. So diving into site reliability and scale, these are just some kind of brief bullet points. The first rule that I've learned is make sure that you test everything in production if possible. Perf environments, I think we all know, rarely reflect reality. The hardware behind them is never the same as what we have in production. And frankly, I invoke Murphy's Law here, but it's probably more of a corollary. If you've tested it in production, if you have not tested it in production, chances are it will fall over when it actually gets out into the wild and meets with a huge wave of users coming in. Again, as I mentioned, use large margins of safety. I know this last holiday I calculated what our traffic should be for the year, looking at business growth. I said, you know what, we'll have a factor of 3. should be plenty. I had other people telling me, no, use a factor of 10, use a factor of 10. And as I'm sure they're happy to always hear me say, they were right and I was wrong. And the number of users, hopefully every year, will surprise you because that means your business is growing. Also, go through and make sure you eliminate single points of failure in your stack. This was a big problem for us this last year. We had some databases that formed a pretty big bottleneck. And when we got hit with more users than we were expecting, they started causing some problems that we had to respond to immediately. After that, once you get rid of your single points of failure, you can start identifying and looking for bottlenecks and ensure that all parts of your system scale. Bottlenecks obviously lead to perf regressions, which gives you less conversion rate, less revenue. Also, the other thing I've noticed is that if you have unexpected bottlenecks, they can put stress on other parts of your system that cause breakdowns that you weren't expecting, even in systems that have been well tested. So once you have a scalable site that is going to stay up and is reliable, you can start focusing on site performance. So site performance, I think everyone agrees, is a key driver of conversion revenue. I know we did a lot of research at Bing to prove this relationship. Google's done a ton. Amazon's done a ton. I could cite a number of studies. If you're in the perf business, you're always preaching the religion of performance to everyone else who isn't. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to point you towards more studies to help you with that evangelism in your own companies. From there, my recommendation strategically is to start with global improvements for your site because they're going to impact all of your pages. You're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. Particularly, there may be some low-hanging fruit. You can limit third-party tags. You can focus on reducing the total byte size of your pages. I know this is kind of twofold. One, it really helps your mobile customers in addition to your desktop customers, but also being in the retail business, I know we all love really rich images of whatever we're selling, and image compression is particularly important because we can try and squeeze the size of those images down while also maintaining quality. Lastly, and this also plays into the site reliability part, cache as much as you can on the CDN. Many CDNs, like Akamai, have other features that they can also turn on for you. I know Ion is pretty popular, especially if you're resource constrained in the amount of developers you have. This can be very useful, but at a minimum, it's going to help absorb a lot of traffic off of your systems and keep them up and performant and stable. Now, after that, you want to start doing strategic optimizations, and this is where I know my own personal use. This is where I've used Blue Triangle a lot. I will capture all of the performance of each page, looking at the real user monitoring, and then I'll start correlating it with the conversion data and looking at the normal purchase paths that all of our users take, and that helped me focus my attention on the right pages. So I know when I first started here, just an anecdote, I spent a lot of time optimizing our homepage. Once I started looking at data from Blue Triangle, I realized very quickly that the majority of our traffic was coming directly into our PDPs from searches and other kind of other sorts of advertising efforts, and that the biggest bang for our buck was actually optimizing the PDPs and not optimizing our homepage. So I kind of redirected our developers' focus onto optimizing our PDPs and really driving down that page load time. So obviously, particularly with retail, it's a very tricky problem about deciding where to invest your resources, and every site is going to be different depending on how your users behave, how you drive traffic to those sites. So in this case, I can't stress enough that you want to make sure that you have the data that you can strategically decide where to invest. Let's see.
Thanks,
yeah.
Gary. I think we're going to, we'll turn it back to Dan, and if you've got any questions, please go ahead and submit them into the Q&A section. We also have some more commentary to come as well. So Dan, it's over to you.
Okay, great. Okay, hold on. I'm just looking at some questions here. So, okay, Gary, we've got a question here for you, and I know you touched a little bit on this, but maybe you can expand upon it. Question was, how has the mobile traffic affected your performance strategy at MS Store?
Good question. So our mobile traffic has steadily grown year over year to the point where it makes up not a majority of our traffic, but a fairly significant portion of our page's traffic. The way we've chosen to deal with this is we actually just designed the site to be fully responsive so that You can view it on a mobile device. You can view it on a desktop using the same code. There are a couple trade-offs to this. One, on a positive side, it makes optimizations much easier for us because we don't need to worry about optimizing and serving data specifically to mobile users. And particularly if you're working in an organization with less dev resources devoted to performance and web development, that can be very useful. The negative side is that your pages, in order to be fully responsive, tend to be heavier just because you need more code to be able to handle all the different situations. So that can be a bit of a performance hit there, but it's a bit of a trade-off.
That's awesome. Tim, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that our particular multiple customers that we're working with find is that especially leading up to the holidays, it becomes a scramble at some point, and being able to know ahead of time which areas to focus on, maybe that there's a area around the load testing, for example. If whenever you do the load testing, don't just look for when it falls over, look for how slow it gets at peak traffic, right? So, I mean, I guess I've got a little bit of a question to throw back at Gary here. So when you look at the traffic at peak loads and you see the slowdown earlier in the season, I know I've worked with hundreds of clients over the years. When you see the slowdown numbers, it can be a little bit daunting. Do you have any words of encouragement for everyone to be, work through it and to make sure you get to the right goals?
You're saying if you are seeing slowdowns, don't panic.
Well, maybe you should panic, right? To make sure
right.
you panic now and save yourself, maybe save your job from later. But yeah, I mean, because sometimes when you run those first load tests early in the season on your holiday site, sometimes load times can double or triple or even go over a minute long. Those are the kinds of moments where you've got to really got to stay focused on the goal.
Yeah, so I would definitely say first is don't panic. If anyone's read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, we all know that's the number one rule, aside from having a towel. But after that, realize that the point of running load tests is in order to find out where your systems are at and what they can handle so that you can then start making investments and improving them. I know that here before I got here, we didn't used to test in production at all. We had a number of availability issues that needed to get solved, and so I pushed very hard for testing early in the year in production and all the time so that we can measure. So to give you some, backstory, we start testing in production probably in February or March of every year. We have a weekly release for everything that we do here at Store. And we actually have a lot of moving parts because the store, as we run it, is a combination of different dev teams and businesses. And these can all impact performance and scalability. So we start early, we get ourselves a good baseline, and we measure every subsequent release against that. We also then identify work and bottlenecks that we want to get through or get done and complete before holiday. Hopefully, generally by the end of the summer, I think when everyone starts worrying about holiday, we've already done our major infrastructure investments at that point. And while we may panic a little bit in the beginning, we know that as the summer goes on, if we did our work properly, we're going to start seeing those numbers creep up, and we're going to see the ability to handle more and more scale and have the performance impact be less. So I know it can be a little daunting, but it's also a great set of data to use to motivate other teams to work with you. So if you're continually seeing, hey, we're forecasting traffic here, here's what our site is able to handle, we want to have our margin of safety, that can be a great way to go ahead and prioritize investments in infrastructure and scale that you may not have otherwise.
Does
that answer your question, Tim?
Oh, definitely.
That actually dovetails into another question that's in here. You partially answered, but I think it'd be good if you just expand upon it. It's geared for you, Gary. What's been your strategy to communicate with the business stakeholders on the importance of good performance? There's a lot of you had mentioned a lot of moving parts. There's clearly at Store. There's various business groups. So when you guys see things, I guess the question is more around, how do you, rally the troops so that you get things done, right? And if you need investment, it sounds like you're going to need to go to someone with the budget if it's not in your own budget. So.
Right. So that's actually an excellent question. So, and I think this applies not just to business groups, but also, to engineering teams. They're also trying to decide where to invest. Performance, for those who haven't really worked in it as much and they're just starting to pay attention to it, it's a discipline that everyone loves to hold up as an excuse for why sales are bad, but rarely does anyone actually want to invest in it unless they think there's a huge problem. And performance is really a continual investment, because as your pages become more rich, more complex, you're going to slow the site down. And if you're not continually making improvements and optimizations, you're going to end up with a problem. And the goal is to never have a problem in the first place. So I found one thing that was very useful was when I was able to start correlating revenue and conversion with performance, because at that point you can have a very honest conversation with your engineering partners and with your business partners about, okay, whatever feature you want or however much you want to invest in performance, if I have a set number of work items that can get you this much time back, we will make this additional revenue. And so when I started being able to get that data, and I began, I would set up one-on-one meetings with various business owners or various other engineering managers. And when you can sit down and show them the distribution of real user traffic and look at the conversion rate and the potential revenue that you're leaving on the table, a lot of eyes start opening. And I found that even a number of colleagues who were not necessarily big supporters of performance and investing in that area quickly changed their tune when they realized that there were some pages where we could see a 5% to 10% increase if we started getting page load times down. And particularly as your business scales, that is a very powerful, sales tool, because few things will give you a return on investment and scale as well as performance. I remember I have other colleagues who would come up and suggest particular improvements to the site, and when you ask how much revenue is this going to bring in, they'll say, it might bring in $20 million more a year or $50 million a year. Depending on how large your retail business is, that may be a significant amount of money. And as your retail business grows, it may no longer be a significant amount of money. Something like performance is going to impact your users across the board, no matter how many users you have. If you have 1,000 visitors, performance will impact them. If you have 1 million visitors, performance is going to impact them. And so it scales. It's an investment that scales very, very well. And actually probably pays back more the more customers you have.
That's great. That's great. I'm assuming you were using the Blue Triangle data when you were having those conversations.
So
okay, cool.
Awesome. I didn't know how much of a shameless plug I should give, but I will say that it's important to have those conversations early and often. And the more you can get your colleagues and business partners oriented around the idea of performance, the more it allows you to drive improvements, not just in your page performance, but also investments in infrastructure, better processes around code development and release and testing, and it kind of drives a big cultural shift as people start to think about performance as like a KPI as opposed to an afterthought.
Right. That's perfect. That's great. Fantastic. Tim, did you want to keep going on here, or do you want me to kind of finish up?
Well, let's give one more round, our opportunity for the audience to add. Those are excellent questions. So if there's any more questions, go ahead and add them in. But I had one more thought to share and kind of throw out there, and that has to do with making sure your third-party your providers are ready to partner with you through the holidays. We have I can kind of attest without saying any names. Some folks have meetings that go through the holiday season and requiring their third-party providers, including us, to be on there because everybody that has code on the site usually will join in on that. But what I've found is that people that are vigilant about the third-party content before the holidays and making sure that they have optimized the third-party content that's going to be on for the holidays well before the holidays happen, are also better suited to handle it through the holidays. And I was just curious to know if you can share what Microsoft's strategy is in terms of controlling. 'Cause a lot of people say, well, that's third-party content's out of my control. Well, ultimately, the whole site's under your control is usually what I answer that. But I'm just really interested to know, what your strategy is for managing, performance in this wild and crazy world that we have with third-party content providers that could potentially throw you for numerous curveballs.
Sure. Yeah, it's actually a very good question. And I was down at Velocity, the Velocity conference this last spring, and saw a very eye-opening presentation that was done by a couple of British engineers who mapped out the impact that third-party tags can have on your system. Particularly once you start executing JavaScript from a third party, you have no idea what can happen. So one thing that we do, first of all, is going back to the testing and production every week, is we include in our load tests, we don't just script out scenarios that affect our servers. We make sure that we go through and request all the third-party tags. So far, most of our partners actually have all been they must be up to scale, because I've never gotten angry emails wondering why Microsoft is tipping over their APIs, which is good. I'm happy to see that. But the other thing is we do a lot of measurements of resource timings and looking into what each third-party, we evaluate each third-party tag individually to see how much time they're adding to the page. Are they being called asynchronously? Are they blocking the page, the render of the page so that it gives a slower experience? And I know this year in particular, we spent a lot of time going through and optimizing each individual tag we had on the site. I want to say that we normally have anywhere between 40 and 50 third-party tags running on the site at a given time. And the way they're generally managed with a tag management system such as Incitin. And the way they get added on is there's not really a central control process to determine what gets put on there and what doesn't. So you'll have various parts of the business and various engineering teams requesting tags that just get added on. And so there's also really no control over where they're loaded in the page. So our performance team took spent several months taking a very heavy look at each tag. What does it do? Do we still need it? We found a number of redundancies, which fortunately we were able to eliminate. We also wrote some simple JavaScript that allowed us to control when the tags were being loaded, because even with a tag management system, it can get a little tricky when you start dealing with tags that fire on particular events or certain parts of the page load. And so we had to manipulate that. We were able to successfully move almost every third-party tag to the bottom of the page and have them load either asynchronously or after the entire page is loaded, with the exception of the A/B testing software that we use. And that was a decision we made because we wanted to make sure that we didn't have screen repaints by pushing the A/B testing system further down and then having them AJAX in some code and modifying the DOM and having to go back and repaint the screen, because we just figured that would be a bad user experience. But for sure, third-party tags are important. Definitely focus on them. Try to build a process around adding them. Another thing that we found was very successful in helping control that was by instituting page weight limits. So we made a deal with our partner web development teams that each of the pages could only download so many bytes. And once we hit a certain threshold, that we needed to negotiate for any new additions and either offset it with further perf optimizations or cut other features or modify how those new additions are loaded so they don't impact your overall load time.
Fantastic. I mean, clearly you've got several plans in place. Another question that just came in: how important is it to have conversion rate, sensitivity data over through the holiday season and tracking that?
Sorry, conversion rate what data?
The conversion rate curves and just basically the data relating performance to the business value through the holidays. How important is that going to be to you this holiday season?
I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be important. I hope it's not as important to me this year as last year. It would have been very interesting for me to see. I know we had some some slight availability issues at different points in the holiday last year, and I would have loved to be able to see their impact on revenue and conversion. The reason I'm saying I'm hoping it's not as important this year too as it is last year is I hope everything goes off without a hitch, so that I won't have that to dig into. But even then, I think particularly since, at least for our site, how the characteristics of usage change so much over the holidays, it gives us a chance to really see how the system performs under load and how the performance of the system is impacting our ability to get users to convert and buy product. And I think that gives us a lot of good data to then begin our holiday planning and investments for the next year.
Fantastic. That makes a lot of sense, having your baseline. Yeah, so it'll be really interesting. Hopefully, as usual, Blue Triangle will be part of that overall conversation, as we do our work with you throughout the season. So I know we're trying to kind of wrap up the session here, and questions. I know we try to keep these to about 45 minutes or so. I think I lost control of if you could just put the presentation back up, Tim or Josh, that would be great. But ultimately, I just want to thank you guys for taking the time, everyone on the phone, for joining us and learn a little bit about how Microsoft is preparing for the holidays. And clearly, Gary, it's an annual thing. It's not something you wait until, here we are in July to do it. What I message heard loud and clear for me anyways was that this is something you start, fiscally, you're starting in February. So
I actually joke that I start thinking about the next holiday before the current holidays even starts. So
there you go. That's great. And that's I think an important message for everyone here, because sometimes people think of these things in terms of I'll do a load test and it's a point in time, and ultimately it's really it's really a year-round type approach. So as we wrap up here, Blue Triangle, our solution is designed to measure that real user experience for mobile, for applications, if you have mobile apps, to, of course, all your desktop and tablet users, and correlating that back to conversion, and providing those type of recommendations on where to spend time. So we're happy to talk to anybody afterwards if they have any questions about our e-revenue insights or real user insights and what that can provide for you, as well as all of the object level detail and object trending and those kinds of things as well that we provide as part of our offering. I'll just touch real quick on here something as we wrap up here, and of course happy to chat with anybody further about this as our conversion boost patented technology, and this is really taking performance, we feel, to that next level where you can, in real time, because we're seeing the sessions and the experiences people are having globally on your site, that you can do something about it in real time. So, imagine having the ability to detect that slow experience that we know is, or we've just, agreed upon as being unacceptable, and then doing something about it. And there's various things that we talk about in terms of doing something about it. I don't know, Tim, you want to just take about 30 seconds and just chat about that if you could.
Yeah. So what we're doing with Conversion Boost and another product we call Fusebox, but basically they're macroscopic and session level methods that we can, in real time, help boost your conversion rates. So the idea is we can clearly see that conversion rates are a lot faster for this particular page, around the 3-second zone mark or faster. But then there's this graduated decline, in this particular view down to about 5 seconds. And so when you start getting into this red zone where conversion rates are the lowest, then we can actually do things in real time to help users that are getting that slower speeds, and they're falling into that slower zone, and they're in danger of converting, in this case, half as often as users that are getting it faster then we can actually help you gradually increase the speed for six pages that happen after that with a variety of methods. So we're basically changing it from, oh, here's a report showing you how conversion rate is curves are being impacted by performance on each of your page, to in real time now we're helping you shift conversion rates higher.
That's great. I appreciate that. And of course, being able to break that out by paid ad traffic versus non-paid ad traffic, it can have a significant impact on those landing pages and the ROI on it, of course. Great. So we're wrapping up here, trying to keep it right to about 45 minutes. Really appreciate your time, everyone here on the phone. And of course, Gary, really appreciate you taking the time to join us and chat with the folks about holiday preparedness for Microsoft Marketplace. And we look forward to the continued relationship with you.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Gary, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everybody. Take care now.
All right. Thanks.
Happy holidays.